The first Micro Four Thirds camera I bought was the Panasonic Lumix GF1. That was back in 2010. I love how small the GF1 is, especially with the 20mm pancake lens. Later on, I got the Olympus EM5 and we also got the Panasonic GX7. And when I start this channel, I got the Panasonic Lumix G85. These are all very nice and compact camera that we really enjoy using. However, you will probably notice the recent new Micro Four Thirds cameras are getting bigger and bigger. The GH6 and now the GH7 are huge, even bigger than a lot of mid-size full-frame cameras. The OM1 and G9 II are not really that small either, and if we ignore G100D and OM5, which are basically re-released with some minor updates, we haven't seen any brand new small Micro Four Thirds camera for quite a while. So why is it? Is that the team at Panasonic and OM System has completely forgot about the compact size is one of the major reasons why people love the Micro Four Thirds cameras? On YouTube, pretty much every week I will see new videos that complaining about the lack of new small Micro Four Thirds camera. This video is not another one of those videos because I think those videos have already done a great job explaining why we want a new small Micro Four Thirds camera, and I don't have anything new or different to add. Instead, I want to jump to the other side of the fence and look at things from manufacturer's point of view and try to understand what is happening. A quick disclaimer, I have not worked in any camera company, so what I'm going to say is just based on my guess. But I do have a master's degree in electronic engineering, and I have been a software engineer for over 20 years and involved in many hardware and software product development. A lot of them are for consumer market, so I have also heard a lot of complaints about why our products don't have this or that. It should be very easy if you just add 2 lines of code or use this from another product to create a perfect product, etc. But I can tell you there is almost always good reason why something is like that, which our customer could not understand unless they also understand all the challenges and issues that we have behind the scene. So that's why I thought it may be interesting if I try to pretend I'm from one of the engineering or product team from Panasonic or OM System and see if I can explain why we haven't seen any new compact Micro Four Thirds cameras for quite a while. Okay, so when we say we want a new small Micro Four Thirds camera, everyone has a different idea what sort of camera that they want. From what I have read and watched on the internet, I think most people would want a compact camera that is photo oriented and have some, but not necessarily all, the latest technology. Most people would want an updated sensor, not the same 20 megapixel sensor that has been around forever. We want the latest autofocus system. Video feature is usually not that high priority as long as it is good enough. So it should be quite easy, right? We are not asking a lot. You just need to remove some features and make the camera smaller, lighter, and cheaper. Well, in theory, yes, but in practice, it's a bit more complicated. Camera has actually improved a lot over the last few years. There are improvements in pretty much every single area, and some may not be very obvious. So while we say we just want a new camera with the new sensor and maybe the new autofocus system, we actually do want a lot more than that. When a new camera comes out, we will be comparing the specs with other latest cameras in the market, not just a 5 years old Micro Four Thirds camera from 2019 or before that. For example, a fast USB-C port is now a must. We also would want faster burst speed and larger photo buffer. We want to have updated electronic viewfinder and LCD screen. This may all seems like small and of course kind of improvements, but a lot of them would require some hardware upgrade to support that. For example, a faster processor to support the higher resolution, higher frame rate electronic viewfinder, and maybe more memory as well. Then we have the bigger upgrades, like the latest PDAF face detection autofocus system with AI subject detection that will surely require major hardware upgrade. For Panasonic, I believe only the latest Venus engine that Panasonic used on the Lumix S5 II onwards has the hardware to support PDAF face detection. So if you need PDAF on a Panasonic camera, then you cannot use the processor from the GH6 or anything before that. You have to use the latest Venus engine that is big, expensive, and also use a lot more power. What it means is, we will also need the latest large BLK22 battery, as any of the smaller battery just can't deliver enough power to drive the processor. Actually, that is probably the reason why the Lumix S9 also uses the BLK22 battery instead of a smaller battery. Because of that, the camera would also generate a lot more heat compared to the previous small Micro Four Thirds camera from a few years ago that used a less powerful processor. And that's one of the reasons why the GH6 and GH7 are such big cameras, because these cameras require an active cooling system to stop it from overheating. A lot of the latest cameras in the market would feel a bit warm after you turn it on for a while, even if you're just taking photos. It's because the latest camera's processor is doing a lot of things even when it looks like it's doing nothing. And this creates two issues. The first one is size. So if Panasonic is creating a new Micro Four Thirds camera, but it has to use a lot of the same components as the S9 because we want the latest autofocus system and some other features, and because of that the same battery as well. So end up the only main difference is really just the sensor. A Micro Four Thirds sensor is surely a lot smaller than a full frame sensor, and that would also generate less heat as well. But with the same processor, battery, and many other components, the total size of all the components together of such a camera is only marginally smaller than the S9, and also the heat generated by the processor would be the same, so the total heat generated would also be very similar. So a Lumix S9 size body is probably the smallest Micro Four Thirds camera that we can create today if we want the latest features. Maybe we can squeeze a few millimeters here or there, but it's really hard to go any smaller than that and create some ultra compact Micro Four Thirds camera like those from many years ago. You may notice cameras from other brands are also getting bigger and bigger over the years. The Sony A7 series is a very good example. If you compare the size of the latest Sony A7 IV with the original A7, the A7 IV is much chunkier and bigger in every dimension, and is also a lot heavier as well. While there are some occasions that a new camera is a little bit smaller than its predecessor, but that is quite a rare case. In general, new cameras are getting bigger and bigger, as that's the easiest way to allow camera manufacturers to add new features. I say easiest way because there are ways to keep the size the same and still can add new features. For example, you can use the latest 3nm or 4nm technology to reduce the size of the processor and also lower the power consumption and heat generation. You can also create some custom processor with less power or only support a subset of features for a lower grade camera. And some other things that you can also do is like create a smaller shutter unit. But all this miniaturization are usually very expensive. extremely expensive in some cases, especially if you consider the number of cameras that can be sold to the market, which makes it really hard and expensive to make the camera smaller. And the irony is, in most cases, the expensive price is paid to reduce the performance of the camera. And I think that is a good segue to talk about the second thing, which is the price. Now, if we continue the previous example, if Panasonic wants to create a new compact Micro Four Thirds camera with some of the latest features, so they will have to use the same sensor, processor, and battery as the Lumix G9 II. So those are some of the most expensive components for a camera, and there are probably some additional work and cost required, like to create and fit a small EVF onto the camera. As I just mentioned before, miniaturization is usually expensive. So while there may be something that Panasonic can do to cut a bit of cost, like give it a more plasticky body, the total cost of such a new camera would still be very similar to the cost of the Lumix G9 II. So now we have a new Micro Four Thirds camera that is smaller than the G9 II. It would be a nice camera if you compare to the old compact Micro Four Thirds camera, as you would now have some of the latest technology. But if you compare it with the Lumix G9 II, there will be some features missing because of the small size of the camera. For example, the EVF would be smaller and lower resolution, and there will be video recording limit and probably less number of ports on the body. So let's say if this camera is launched at US $1,599, so is $300 cheaper than the launch price of the G9 II. How many people would want to buy this camera instead of the G9 II? I think some of you may, but I have a feeling most people would think it is too expensive and end up just go with the bigger but more feature-rich G9 II instead. If such a camera is priced at a much lower price point, like $1,000 US, then I think it would sell really well. But remember, this camera would have to share a lot of the components with the G9 II, the same sensor, processor, battery, etc. And then we also have other overhead expenses associated with selling a camera, which would be the same as well. So if Panasonic has to spend 2 or even just 1 year to develop such a camera, and they can only sell this camera at $1,000, which is like half the price of the G9 II, that probably means they are not making any money. So does it even make sense for a company to develop a product like this? And I guess that's the reason why we haven't seen any new compact Micro Four Thirds camera in the last few years. But I'm not saying we won't see any compact Micro Four Thirds camera in the market anymore. There are still different ways to reduce costs. For example, use the older 20 megapixel with PDAF instead of the latest 25 megapixel sensor. Or make the EVF an external accessory so the camera itself can be made a little bit smaller and cheaper. Each of these do have its own drawbacks, and I know some of you may say yes, but I already saw many comments on the internet saying no when people bring up these ideas or suggestions on what they want to see on the next Micro Four Thirds camera. Or maybe from the recent success of the Fuji X100VI, Panasonic or OM System can design a super sexy and premium camera so people would just want to buy it even if it's expensive. Personally, this is what I want to see the most. But remember, it took Fujifilm 10 years, 5 iterations to make the X100 become really successful in terms of sales. So if Panasonic or OM System release a new premium compact Micro Four Thirds camera today, there really is no guarantee that it will be a successful product immediately. Their previous attempts like the Pan-F or GM1 or GM5 were not successful commercially at all. But what do you guys think? What do you think Panasonic or OM System should do? What sort of price would you be happy to pay if there is a new compact Micro Four Thirds camera that comes with some of this latest technology, but still missing a few features if you compare to their latest flagship because of the more compact size of the camera. I would really like to hear your thoughts and suggestions, and maybe I can also share your thoughts with the manufacturers as well.